Okay. You're rolling. Yeah, rolling.
Good evening, guten Abend. Good evening and welcome to our students, our faculty, friends and guests of the Global Institute. My name is Martin Klei. I'm the academic director here, and I'll be the moderator for this panel tonight. In true European spirit, I'm going to look into the camera right now, and I want to say also hi to our colleagues and the students at our partner institutes in Paris, in Rome, and yes, even in London. I want to say hi to London as well. Hi, Ray, hi, Felicity. Those colleagues and students might be watching, hopefully will be watching this event later as a recording. We'll be sharing in the spirit that we've sort of embraced with our partners there. We'll be sharing ideas and sharing this event, and we look forward to receiving and then sharing with you all the lectures coming out of those institutes as well. Because this is the first event in the new Global Institute lecture series, and this is an attempt on our part to invite guests and experts to our institute and give us and our students the opportunity to discuss some of the most relevant issues of our contemporary moment. As is the case with today's panel on the state and possible future of the European Union, the topics often emerge naturally from the classes we teach here at the Institute. And this is Professor Brockman's class on the EU, and many of the students here are currently in his class. Just as important as what we choose to discuss here is how we choose to discuss it. We designed this debate in a way that will bring out different visions of the EU's future. Our two panelists have agreed to enact, to role play almost, what in German is known as a Streitgespräch, that is a spirited argument made up ideally of a lot of really good arguments, however much they will be in disagreement with one another. That's something that we try to embrace in our classes here, in our teaching methodology as well. This format will allow us to hear two opposing responses to the various crises of the European Union. It's hard to list them all, right? But of course the Euro crisis, the refugee crisis, the crisis of political legitimacy of European institutions, and so forth. We could go down the list. And those two responses are already indicated in the title of this panel, right? Back to the nation state retreating, back moving away from the European integration that has started, of course, back in the 1950s, and has been making progress, of course, under the phrase ever closer union. That is sort of the other pole, if you will, of the debate tonight. And Professor Brockman will play the role of the person embracing further integration. Is that correct? That's right. And here we'll have the opposite, represented by Professor Brasch. Now, the panelists have also agreed to remain civil. That is not a given in the contemporary climate when it comes to discussions and debates about the European Union. So thank you very much for that. And in the open discussion portion, they will have the chance to make their own personal views a little clearer to us, because they have both worked extensively and published extensively on the European Union. And with that, I will introduce them properly now. So right next to me here is Professor Ulrich Brasche, who teaches at the TU Brandenburg. Like Professor Brockman, he has written extensively on the macroeconomics of the EU and is the author of a book called European Integration. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
And Professor Heiner Brockman, our own professor here, who holds a professorship at the Bonn University here in Berlin, and whose publications have focused on financial and monetary aspects of the European Union. Both of them are economists and also political scientists, and we very much look forward to hearing your initial statements. We'll keep those quite short, to about 15 minutes. Have then a response by the other panelists, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience, and I'll monitor this. So again, thanks to both of you for being here. Thanks to you all for coming, and let's get started.
Good guy first or bad guy first?
I don't have a preference.
Okay. So, good guy, bad guy. Bad guy first. So, thank you for this kind invitation and for the opportunity to participate in a joint thinking about Europe. I'm gladly share my contribution about what goes in Europe. And Americans might think, what the hell is Europe about, and why should we care? That's the answer I would like to have from you, why you think you should care about Europe. I have an idea about why we should jointly care about that development. So I'll make a few statements from the bad guy's perspective. A bad guy is a person that challenges what happened so far in Europe and is not enthusiastic about achievements and is proposing a change in the whole strategy. So I think my brother is David Cameron from our United Kingdom, and I think he is one of the best Europeans I know. So why do I think this? Cameron and myself, we are both convinced that the European integration is a brilliant idea. And it started wonderfully in the early 50s. And why did it make a good start? Because it brought nation states together on a joint platform of economic exchange. And this makes a lot of sense. But then Europe started deviating from the chosen track, going into a completely wrong direction called ever closer union. And why does Cameron think, and why am I convinced that this is a wrong track? Because ever closer union is a nice formula for shifting all power to Brussels, shifting all resources, all money to Brussels, and having no say, or having at least not the voice that in a democratic community we should be in command. So centralization is what some people that call themselves the true Europeans, the greatest figure nowadays on stage is Jean-Claude Juncker. What they propose, and why do I think that this is the wrong direction? I defend, and for a German this is difficult to say, I defend the nation. You might be aware of German history and saying in German, I am proud to be German, is meaning I am a bloody, dirty Nazi. And how can Germans defend nationhood? I think we can. Because what is a nation? A nation is a shared history, is a shared identity, is the feeling of belonging together. And this then encompasses solidarity, being ready to share resources, being ready to take care of your brothers in your nation, and your sisters, of course, sorry for the sisters. So I think nation is a very valuable concept. What is beyond what I mentioned already, what is a feature of a nation? It's an organization of a community following democratic rules, if it's a democratic nation. So democracy encompasses, we have clear rules and procedures for making decisions together. And this involves that the minority can accept to be a minority in certain decisions. So we make political decisions together and we share responsibility. And this togetherness of decision making and responsibility is a very important feature, and this is missing in Europe. We have a broken link. Decisions are taken somewhere else, and responsibility or carrying the burden or the liability is somewhere else. So we do have nations on the continent of Europe or in the European Union that have very different preferences. We have characteristics of, this is a typical Danish perception of the world and of right or wrong, and the typical Italian, Greek, German, French. We are different. This is wonderful. Europe doesn't want to do away with the differences. Unity in diversity is the slogan. But, it sounds nice, doesn't it? But what is the substance? Can we have unity in diversity when we are so different and try to install a one-size-fits-all policy? I think we can't. And why should we? What would be the advantage of doing this one-size-fits-all move? Centralized powers always tend to neglect local preferences. And as a political scientist and as a Democrat, I think local preferences should dominate our lives as long as there are no overriding principles where we all agree, yes, this and that can be shifted to a higher level of decision making, in this case to the European institutions in Brussels. So you already talked about, that's what I learned about the democratic deficit in Europe and the common view of what this is encompassing. And I would just like to summarize that as long as this deficit is not healed, is not overcome, we should not go deeper into integration. We should refrain from ever closer union. And the main point is we do not have a democratically legitimate electorate in Europe. There is no European nation. And I refer here to the German Constitutional Court's ruling from 1993, the famous Maastricht Treaty ruling. There is no European folk. The second is, and this is based on the recent publication of one of the most prominent judges of the European Constitutional Court, Dieter Grimm. He is stressing that the stream of legitimation is flowing from the voter via parliament to the government. And majority-minority voting is democratically okay as long as it's within this stream. And this stream is interrupted, is breaking when we leave the nation and go to Brussels. And the main breaking point is qualified majority ruling in the European Council. Because the situation can occur, and now we do have this in the refugee crisis with Hungary, for example, and Slovakia, where a clearly legal ruling or legal decision was taken based on qualified majority ruling that refugees that entered European Union territory must be redistributed over the European member states according to a certain quota. This was a completely legal decision, but I think it's not legitimate. And Dieter Grimm is supporting this point. Not legitimate due to the reasons I tried to last not least, as long as we do not have institutions that mimic the proper division of powers between executive, legislative, and judicative institutions, as long as this is not given on a European level, we should not and ever integrate further. Last point, maybe so he gives me a couple of more minutes. So what do I suggest? I suggest to reinvent Europe. And I think David Cameron had a couple of brilliant ideas regarding this. So let's develop a more flexible design. There's a bad name for this flexibility. This is Europe à la carte. Everybody picking and selecting what tastes best for him or her. And I'm asking, why not? Why shouldn't we agree on things we can agree on and not agree on things we can't? So let's do things on the intergovernmental stage between nations, and let's form a flexible design, a variable geometry of Europe, instead of a one-size-fits-all. So we can do things together where all participants think it's an advantage for me to take part. And let's drop things where resistance is growing so much and is making Europe explode. And Brexit is just the first step. And I see this forced ever closer as the first nail in the coffin of European integration. Because I look into the different member states and the political movements, and I see in Italy and in France and in Finland and in Denmark and in Germany many minorities, but growing minority resistance groups. They are not all bloody non-understanding, they are not all bloody uneducated Nazi types. No, they are not. Not all of them. So I'm convinced we should take those bad feelings that I've got those on seriously, instead of doing this blame game. We are the good guys, they are the bad guys. We are good because we are for ever closer, and they are bad guys because they are in the end. This blame game doesn't lead us nowhere. Okay, so I think this is quite some little bombs for defussing and for discussion, and he will now do away with me. I think so. I'm not sure.
So thank you, Mr. Brasche, for these insights and these points that we're definitely going to discuss about. My position is to take the other role. I'm going to give you some arguments that speak in favor of a deeper integration. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about a new institutional design for the European Union. That, however, is only going to be my last point. My second is going to be that I'm in favor of a EU-wide referendum on where we go from here. And however, the first point I'm going to start with is what actually we can learn from Brexit. But let me first say that European integration is a major achievement. We got the Nobel Prize in 2012, and we deserve it. I think it's a brilliant concept for integration and also for bringing people together. I know some say it's only a project of the elites, you know, of some intellectuals. And I sometimes wonder, you know, for centuries in Europe, the elites have caused wars and sent their people to fight each other and kill each other. And now, after all, we have some elites that choose a different path, and a successful path, because since the end of the Second World War, there's been no more war in Europe except for some minor conflicts. And now people say this with some disrespect, you know, it's only a project of elites. I think it's a rather nice approach, and it has brought peace, so we can also say that. And also I think it has brought prosperity. But with these two achievements, there's one problem. Peace is taken for granted. Nobody wakes up, especially younger people, and says, wow, what a peaceful time, you know, we're not fighting France anymore, or England, you know, which not too long ago, even my grandparents, they were taught that the French and the British, they were the natural enemies. And enemies in a literal sense, you know, which you best eat and kill. So, but peace is taken for granted. Nobody really thinks that European integration is important to guarantee peace. And the second with this prosperity is even more tricky, because how do you know how much actually European integration contributed to a higher level of growth and employment and prosperity? You don't. You know, maybe without European integration we'd be better off. And even with the British now, in 10 years, maybe if they're in recession, they're going to say we better stay with the European Union. But if things go well, you know, you can't compare the two situations. So that's what makes it really hard sometimes to make the case. What has Brexit revealed? Let me first say Brexit was a disaster. Okay, this is not my topic, but I'm still annoyed what happened there. And for the UK, but even more for the European Union, it's a disaster. However, what has Brexit revealed? What we should take in mind if we discuss the future of the European Union? Well, first of all, the EU has become a scapegoat. You know, and former times used to be other nations, which is also still very typical, you know, whenever the regime has problems with some issues, internal issues, the best thing you can have is an extra enemy, you know. So this we don't have anymore. So apparently now the EU has to take that position, especially the Commission has to take that position. Or you could say better than fighting other countries, you know, but still sometimes it's a little bit frustrating. The second thing that Brexit has revealed, that people don't really know too much about the European Union. Now it's a complex issue, you know. It's constantly changing these rules and procedures and powers and all that. It's a very unique set of institutions, very unique phenomenon. But still, you know, as a EU citizen, you should have some knowledge, and I feel there's a lack of that. That actually has made it easier for the Leave campaign, from my point of view. If you simply look at immigration, I'm not going to get into that too deeply, but one thing I just found was, you know, it was basically about the 3.3 million people from other EU countries living in the UK. But however, there's 1.2 Britons living in other EU countries and working there. And that's a much higher percentage point if you look at the population size. That was not an issue at all. So that's a really weird thing, and there were other things, again, Brexit is not our topic, but the lack of knowledge is something we shouldn't forget talking about in this future. Then the Commission is perceived as an undemocratic monster. So it's the scapegoat thing, you know, it's easy to put the blame on Brussels. You don't like something, may not even relate to you, you've got some one to blame. And finally, people choose options which are to their disadvantage. No, that's part of democracy, I reckon. But still, you know, if you, for the illusion of a bigger control on political issues, you're willing to damage the foundation of prosperity, then that's something rather strange. And I mean, one thing, foundation of prosperity, is specialization and trade. And this idea, this concept, division of labor, has been supposed by a British parliamentary and a British economist, David Ricardo, who must have turned around in his way. Well, all this might happen in other EU countries. There's a high risk of contagion. That's also what my colleague Mr. Brasher has pointed out. And the question now is, what are we doing? You know, wait until the next country applies for exit, and then again stay back, not take part in the discussion as we did in the UK. Other EU countries said there's an internal issue in the UK. Commission said we're not going to intervene, we're going to stay back. That's the British thing. I think what we need, we can't stay back. We can't be passive, but we need to be active. And that's why I hope, apart from this institutional reforms that I'm trying to make the point here, you find convincing that it's a time to involve people in Europe. And now it's been said that there's no European or EU demos, there's no such thing. And I strongly doubt that. Two-thirds, 2 out of every 3 Europeans consider themselves as citizens of the EU. Now maybe they're also considering themselves as German or French or British, like I do. But they're considering themselves citizens of the EU. They have an EU passport. So I think that we can also go for a referendum and ask them how they feel, what we should make out of the Brexit situation. And I would suppose we simply offer 3 options for the future institutional framework. We say we're going to introduce a true government for the European Union, which is the case I'm going to be making just now. We keep the status quo, more or less, the treaties that we have, and we go from that, do some incremental further steps for integration if needed. Or we cut back powers and go back to a Europe of nations, which was supposed by my colleague. Now, the positive effects of such a referendum would be to involve people and thus give them information, and also, you know, we don't have one language, we have actually 24 official languages in the European Union. But however, that should be possible to get them interacting on these issues. And so it's not on the details, obviously, but it's on the major question. You want to go this way, or you want to stay where we are. I already have a date for this referendum, if you want to write it down in your calendar. It's going to be the 8th of May in 2020. Anybody knows what we celebrate then? It's
the end